About 6 months ago, I redid my entire office, and it has been great. It's insane, like how much better it is to work in here and make stuff in here and all that. But there was one last missing piece to that puzzle that I was desperate to solve, and that was my desk over here, because this was just a sad corner of frustration and poor cable management. So I basically blew the whole thing up and redid everything from scratch, and I want to share that with you because I'm excited about it, and hopefully maybe there's something interesting or helpful that you might be able to take away from it as well. The biggest lesson I learned here was to not be stuck with the results of my past thinking. Redoing the whole space kind of taught me that as well. But my desk setup, which wasn't even originally over here, was something that had been pieced together over a number of years, and it had been that way for a number of years, and it might have kind of worked at the time, but it was not working for me anymore. And so every time I tried to do anything over there, I was kind of immediately frustrated, or things weren't working right, or it just wasn't working out. And instead of being limited by how things have been, instead of thinking like, well, this is how it has to be. The computer is here, so the cables have to run that way. I only have cables of this length, so that means a piece of equipment has to be in this specific spot. Or I only have this arm, so this monitor has to be here. Like, I took the entire thing apart until it was just a table, and then I basically was able to just put everything where I wanted it. Like, I didn't think about cables, I didn't think about power. I just built like the ideal desk setup and then figured out ways to make that work. So if that meant like, changing things around, moving things, getting new cables. There's a whole bunch of stuff mounted on the bottom of here that I'm going to show you in a second, redoing all of that. But it all works really well, specifically for me. Might not be a copy and paste setup for you, but I'll show you some of what I did. And of course, any relevant links will be in the description. So let's start with everything that's on the desk, including the desk itself, which is just the same old Husky workbench from Home Depot. I've had this for, I think, almost 10 years now at this point, and it works great. So that hasn't changed at all. And a lot of the stuff on it also has not really changed. So what we have on top of the desk here, I'll start here. This is the one thing that I still need to change. This is my speaker. This is a little Bluetooth speaker, a little Sony Bluetooth speaker that works well enough. Anytime I'm editing or doing anything important with audio, I always use headphones. So I don't really care about having like really good high-end monitor speakers. And I kind of don't want them because they usually take up a lot of space. So I'm just going to replace that with like a small little kind of nice set of computer speakers whenever I find them. And that's really the last thing I need to change. But that's mostly for just listening and like listening to music and podcasts and stuff, not really like actual editing and important audio work. My monitor hasn't changed. It's still the same 34-inch LG curved ultra-wide monitor. I think it's the least expensive curved ultra-wide that they made, or maybe they still make it. I like it because of all the different inputs. So you can use HDMI or mini display. It's got USB and also has USB-C, so it can power and display from a MacBook Pro with just one cable, which is a huge pro to this monitor. And if you're wondering what this is not my wallpaper or my desktop. This is actually just a QuickTime. This is a stock image of like background textures, and it's just a QuickTime file. I like to put that up in the background a lot of times when I'm making videos, because in B-roll, this kind of blurs out and looks really nice, and it just it's a lot more dynamic than just a regular desktop, or if the monitor shuts off and then it's just a big giant black rectangle in the background. I don't really like that. I'm just kind of going in order from left to right. I do have my Elgato Stream Deck. This is kind of the old school original Stream Deck, which is extremely nice. And I've got mine currently decked out with a bunch of stuff for different live streams and things. Basically, it's just a keyboard, a programmable keyboard. You can assign different commands and different things like that for not just live streaming, but also applications, programs, all kind of cool stuff. These Stream Decks are pretty awesome. My keyboard that's in here hasn't changed. It's a Logitech MX Master Keys, and I still use the Magic Mouse in here. This is the blue one I got from Colorware. I do have this really nice Razer gaming mouse that I bought for gaming, but I've been using it as my main mouse for things like Final Cut Pro and Ecamm as well. But this is mainly connected to my MacBook Pro over here, which is all based around my Mac Mini. I just use the Apple Magic Mouse still. And this desk mat is getting a little bit older. It's from a brand called GDBT on Amazon. They still make mats, but I don't think they make this pattern anymore, unfortunately. And then here we kind of have like road corner, road central, you might call it. I've been using the Rodecaster Duo as my main desk Rodecaster pretty much since it came out, even though I really love the Rodecaster Pro. The Rodecaster Pro has 4 inputs, and I really, especially when I'm at my desk, I never need 4 inputs. So 2 inputs is kind of the maximum of what I need for XLR over here. So this is perfect, and then I can do everything else with like the computer and different audio and all that kind of stuff. And then I use my Rodecaster Pro 2 whenever I'm making videos that involve mic comparisons where I need like 4 microphones connected. I'm switching between them all the time, or live streams or stuff like that. And other times I'm working and recording over here at my desk where...
It looks like Tom lost his voice, and not a moment too soon, too. I think he was moments away from another cheesy pun. He might feel like he's being punished, but I think the rest of us are being spared.
No, I didn't lose my voice. I'm just trying to think of the wide array of things I want to share about the sponsor of this video, which is Motion Array and their new AI voiceover feature.
Oops, sorry for jumping to conclusions and for getting my hopes up, but since you mentioned it, I'm happy to talk about Motion Array's AI voiceover tool, because that's what I am.
Okay, then, so here's my question. I've got this nicely redone desk setup. I've got a Rodecaster and my microphone, multiple microphones. Where would an AI voiceover feature fit into this workflow?
Well, first of all, I thought we were friends and you just enjoyed my company.
That's not, I did not mean to hurt your feelings.
But beyond that, whether or not you've got a nicely redone desk setup, there are times when it's just not practical or possible to record your own audio. And that's when AI voiceover can help keep things sounding great.
Hey, did Tom hurt your feelings?
Do you need me to rough him up?
It's okay, guys. He can't help being a bit dense.
How could you be so insensitive? Have you no heart?
No, I think there has been a misunderstanding.
Well, the thing that I want you to understand is that Motion Array's AI voiceover lets you choose lots of different options for your voice, including gender, video category, language, speed, and emotion to help dial things in exactly how you want them. Because despite your masterful acting, Tim, these voices were all generated by you typing in text and adjusting the settings until things sounded just right.
It's Tom, by the way, but I feel like we're heading down this meta existential crisis path that I'm not quite equipped to deal with. So I think you were telling me more about Motion Array and AI voiceover?
Yep, nice save. Once you find the voice you want, just enter your text and generate the perfect voiceover.
After your voiceover is generated, you can preview it in the library and then download it to add to your project.
So if you want to check out AI voiceover along with all the music, sound effects, templates, plugins, and footage that Motion Array has to offer, the Everything plan has you covered. And if you just need voiceovers, there's also a dedicated AI voiceover plan. So thank you again to Motion Array for sponsoring this video, and be sure to use the link in the description for $50 off of your subscription.
Now, Tom, speaking of descriptions and putting aside any hurt feelings, let's hear more about this desk setup.
Okay, that sounds good because there's a lot that I'm excited to share about it. And something I'm really excited about is this arm, or these arms. It's 2-in-1. So I had my Rodecaster on an arm, which is really nice, and I had my monitor on an arm, which is really nice, but there were 2 separate arms, which took up 2 separate locations. Oh, and this is a single mount that has 2 arms coming out of it. It's supposed to hold 2 monitors, but it works really well for the monitor and the Rodecaster. And I like this arm because even though the desk is up against a wall, it still has a lot of flexibility. Some arms really need to move out in order to work well, and this one works nicely even if you're up against a flat surface like a wall. This is a very strong arm though, so I actually had to put the tension at its lowest level to support the Rodecaster because the Rodecaster is so light, so sometimes it still wants to kind of pop up a little bit, but it works great. Now we can move this out of the way, maybe unplug the headphone. Here I have the Rodecaster Video and the Streamer X, and the reason I have both of them is to stay up to date with firmware updates, and then also the Streamer X gives me a 4K capture card if I ever need a single source of 4K. And then as we're talking about cameras, this is my Sony a7 IV. Currently it has the Sony 16-35 lens on it, and then the Elgato prompter just hanging off the lens. And this works really well for video calls and live streams. You can kind of see the shot right there. I can use a different lens if I want more background blur, but this is nice and versatile, and I don't have to then swap it out with the lens that's usually on my FX3 over there. So this is kind of my main shot here, which I like, and it works pretty well overall. And I talked about this in my 4K streaming setup video. The camera's on an iFootage Komodo tripod head, which I like because it has a Manfrotto plate, and it's more than strong enough to support whatever you put at it. But the thing I've changed is this stand, which is just the small rig. This is really inexpensive. It's a telescoping desk clamp camera stand, and I just got it on Amazon, and it honestly works great, and it takes up no space on the desk, which is fantastic. It does come with a little ball head that's fine for smaller cameras, but I took it off and put this here. And even though it's a very inexpensive mount, it's just a piece of metal, so there's really not much that can go wrong there as long as it's firmly attached to the desk. And then the other mount that I have added is this Ulanzi overhead mount, because I always try different ways to get overhead camera shots, and this one ended up being kind of the simplest to have one permanently in place. So this is very similar to the small rig mount, especially down here. It's pretty much exactly the same. It telescopes up, but then you have this crossbar that comes out. And what's really nice about this is the way this crossbar goes through here. There's no way that it can basically bend because it's metal being held in place by metal. And you can turn it and adjust it a bit, which is super helpful. And then I just put the old ball mount from my Joby GorillaPod on there. And it's strong enough to support any of my cameras, but I currently have the Sony ZV-1F, which is a great overhead camera. And this is just running into the Rodecaster video, so I can switch over to the overhead shot, and then, you know, there's my keyboard. The reason I have that there specifically, though, is actually for the Rodecaster video. So as I can do tutorials, I can just pull that out, and now I have an overhead shot of the Rodecaster video, or anything else that I need. And the reason I have the ZV-1F in this handle is because currently the Rodecaster video does not let you flip or adjust sources. So normally I would just mount the camera on the tripod head, but it would be kind of facing the wrong way and it would look weird when I switched to the overhead shot. It would almost look like it's backwards or upside down. And currently there's no way in here to like take that source and flip it 180 degrees. So basically the camera has to be pointed in the correct orientation while you're filming. Hopefully that's a feature they'll add soon. So in order to do that, I just put this handle on here that goes in the camera's accessory shoe, and then the tripod head can just mount directly to the handle. And the mic arm I have over here is the Elgato Low Profile Wave Arm Pro, which I absolutely love because it's got this pneumatic part here. So it's strong enough to support anything. It can even support this entire rig if I wanted to. And it's super easy to adjust. Currently I have the Rode Procaster on here with the pop filter from a company called BSW, like Broadcast Supply Warehouse Worldwide, something like that. This is an expensive pop filter, but it works great on the Procaster and the RE20 or any similar microphones. I switch out my mic all the time though, so this changes a lot. I've just been currently really liking the sound of the Procaster in this setup. So that's there right now. Over here on the side, I do have a little clamp for my headphones, which are the Rode NTH100s. And I do have, you might have noticed these RGB lights that are kind of glowing around the perimeter of the desk. Those are the Elgato RGB strip lights, which I really like. They don't flicker on video. They work really well. They have cool patterns you can do, and everything can be adjustable either from your computer or from the Stream Deck. And they actually don't take up a spot on your computer or anything. They connect over Wi-Fi, so they don't take up a USB port or anything like that. But speaking of USB ports, I think now it would be important to go under the desk and explain everything that's happening down here and how this works, which looks a little chaotic, but I promise is significantly improved. I do have all of the important equipment connected to a UPS, which is not a delivery service, but it does deliver reliable power and battery backups to things like computers and networking equipment and whatever. So these are incredibly handy. I have a whole separate video about those. The problem was this used to be on the ground and I had it in like a little cabinet. It was taking up a bunch of space. So what I did was I bought a computer bracket and drilled it to the bottom of the desk. And this is a bracket that's made to hold like PC towers, but it works really well for the UPS because it's kind of the same size and shape as a PC tower. So that's where all the power is. And then I bought these cable caddy things. They come in a 2-pack, and that's just kind of where I piled, you know, different adapters and different cables, basically to keep things up so they weren't constantly getting pulled. And this is as good as it's gonna get, okay? It's just the way that it is. Over here, it kind of looks like I have hanging cables, and well, that's probably because these are hanging cables, but the reason for that, this is my XLR cable. So if I want to change or move microphones or even use a microphone somewhere else, I do have extra length of the XLR cable that goes up here, and that's just kind of nice to have. And then these two cables are on a little headphone rack here. This one is for the Elgato foot pedal, and this is another high-speed 20 gigabit per second cable that can power the Elgato prompter. So times that I don't want to use the prompter at my desk, maybe I want to go over here and film with my FX3, I can take the prompter, put it over there, and then I can just run this long cable and still power the prompter from this same computer. And same thing with the Elgato pedal, I can use this cable to kind of put it basically anywhere else in the room. So I have 3 of these same brackets, but they're holding 3 different things. One is my Mac Mini, one is a USB hub with a built-in SSD, and another is a Thunderbolt hub. And this really helps a lot. So this is still the base model M1 Mac Mini. It's like 4 years old at this point. Still works incredibly well. I edit all my videos on my 14-inch M1 Max MacBook Pro that I've had for about 3 years now. So I don't do a ton of video editing on here, maybe little tiny things every once in a while. But this is pretty much my main computer, mostly for almost all the streams that I do, unless I want to stream from a different location, and then I use the MacBook for that, or YOLO Box. And this one does all my video calls and a lot of podcast editing, and then of course like web browsing, email, admin stuff. So it's still more than capable for that. Sometimes I do Photoshop and thumbnails. It's still just that super base model M1 Mac Mini. They don't make it anymore, but it's going super strong, and obviously is a pretty good testament to not necessarily needing to buy the most powerful computer anymore, because this was like $600, I think, maybe $700. And now I think you can get them, the newer ones like the M2 and the M3, for like $550 to $650 a lot of times. So super good deal. Mac Mini, super awesome. And even though every port in the computer is being used, I did position it with the back going out this way, so that way it's easy to get under the desk and change anything if I need to. Now, one of the main things I've had since getting my Mac Mini is this hub right here, which is nice because it has USB and SD cards, but it also has space for an SSD inside. So there's a 1 terabyte SSD. So even though this computer is 256 gigs, this hub makes it 1256 gigs, which is very nice. And I actually have this positioned so it bumps into the mount of the Mac Mini, and that way I can push memory cards in here without it sliding around or doing anything weird. This next hub is a new addition, but a very important one. This is a Sonatec Echo 11, and it's a Thunderbolt dock. So what this means is it's very, very high speed. This is the front of it. It has the cable that connects to the computer. And then it also has USB charging, headphone out, and another card reader. But on the back, it has a bunch of high-speed USB-C and USB-A ports and an Ethernet port. And this is important for things that require a lot of power, like the Rodecaster Video or the Streamer X, or even the Rodecaster Duo sometimes, the Elgato Prompter. Any stuff that needs high speed and a lot of power, this is a hub that can handle all that. And another thing that I like about this hub quite a bit is that it has a power button. So certain things that require a lot of power but don't have power buttons, like the Streamer X or the Elgato Prompter, I can actually just push this button here, and then those things turn off. So if I don't want those on all the time, I now actually have a nice easy way to turn those on and off. I did try to be pretty intentional with how I put the power together here. So basically, if I walk in the room and I don't change anything, I can use all of the essentials. I can turn on the computer, I can use the Rodecasters, like all that stuff is just ready to go all the time. But I don't need all of this stuff powered on all the time. So I have, the little dock that I can turn on some of the accessories. I also have a power strip here that can turn on some of the other peripherals, like this is also connected to the power supplies that run my cameras and the power supplies that run some lights that I don't necessarily need. I still do have this little remote here that has a lot of things connected to it. So I can do key lights, hair lights, camera system, like all kinds of cool things just through the remote here, which it's these little things that plug into the outlet there, and I can turn things on and off that way. So it's sort of like different stages. If I need the whole room powered on because I'm doing a full stream with full lights and everything, I can turn all that on. But if I just need to come in here and use the computer for a little bit or do a quick video call, I don't necessarily need everything turned on. And so I can kind of do it in stages, which I feel like is just a smart thing to do and a helpful thing to do. And since I just mentioned it, the last thing I want to cover is how I am powering my camera. So I did put these cable wrap cover things here. There are 3 cables going into my A7 IV. There's an HDMI, a USB high-speed power one, and then also a cable for the Elgato Prompter. And that just keeps things nice and organized. And my overhead camera is very similar, where I have, this is actually a micro HDMI adapter into an HDMI cable and then a USB cable for power. And both of the cameras are running into this 65-watt power adapter that powers them over USB, and that is also connected into a remote thing, so I can turn camera power on and off remotely. I have bought several of these Ugreen 65-watt power adapters. That's what I'm using back there. And these work great because they have multiple USBs, even though I pretty much only ever use 2 at a time. And they're perfect for powering Sony mirrorless cameras indefinitely, which is definitely awesome. So I hope that gives you an insight into some of the decisions that I made here, and I hope it gives future me, if I forget why I did some of this, maybe this will answer those questions too in the future for myself. But the biggest lesson, again, the biggest takeaway is to not feel like you are stuck with how things have been in your setup. Sometimes it feels like this is just a law of the universe and the way something has to be. But if you have the time, just kind of starting from scratch from a fresh perspective can really change things. And it doesn't mean that you were wrong in the past. It doesn't mean like, wow, so dumb, I can't believe I was using this kind of a setup. That could have been the perfect setup for that point in time, but everything changes. Needs, workflows, equipment, all that stuff changes. So, reevaluating and evolving your workspace and your equipment and your setups over time is probably a really helpful and a really practical thing to do. And I also, there's some new stuff here. There's, the Rodecaster video and some newer things. But I also, there's some older things like the original M1 Mac Mini. So I don't want you to feel like, oh, you got to get all the newest stuff all the time. Like this table is 10 years old. I don't have a 4K monitor. I'm using an old Bluetooth speaker from my old classroom that I bought when I was a teacher. Like you can use old stuff and new stuff. You don't have to totally, go into debt every time. You want to just evolve and set up your setup again. But that was a perfect setup to thank everyone who helped support my channel. And if you want to know more about the space that I'm working in, check out my most recent studio tour video, because that kind of gives you insight into everything else that's happening in what is now a really awesome and really functional space.